Today, I am joined by retired Colonel Tony Shaffer to go over the Iran situation, where it could go well, where it could go bad. Colonel Shaffer, thank you for joining me.
Hey, Stephen, always great to be with you. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. If you watch Fox News and Newsmax, the first week of this U.S. operation with Israel looks like we've done an incredible job. If you watch MS Now and CNN, they're saying things like the military looks weak, they look unprepared, they don't know what they're doing. What are your thoughts on how things are going with this new operation?
The tragic loss of the 6 service members in the attack against us is tragic. We lost 3 F-15 fighters, fighter bombers to fratricide. The Kuwaitis shot them down. I don't know what they're seeing because other than that, everything is going amazingly well. We've had a week now of combat operations at a high tempo. I mean, a very high tempo. I talk to folks all the time, Stephen, and we are pushing the men and women of our services to the limits. I mean, really. I mean, not everything that's going on is being publicly shown right now, but I'm telling you, we're doing a lot, and we're doing it very well. There's no indication that there's been any loss of operational capability based on incompetence or other things. And look, your audience knows Pete Hegseth and I are personal friends, and I'm one of his best cheerleaders. With that said, I'll be the first to criticize Pete, and he knows it, if I think he's doing something stupid. I mean, I had the same relationship with Joe Dunford. General Dunford, when he was chairman, recognized that, I will be blunt about my perspective on things, and it's true. So at this point, no, I have nothing to criticize General King, the chairman, or Pete Hegseth on. They've been amazingly effective in dismantling the Iranian military capabilities, their terrorism capabilities. And look, I mean, anytime you can take, with an ally, the ally did the primary hit, but anytime you can take out 40 of the enemy's leaders in one strike in the first hours of the war, that's pretty darn good. That's pretty good. And so the intel driving this has been extraordinarily accurate. The operations have been very flawlessly executed. So I don't know what the left's complaining about. They keep saying we don't know what the end state is. The end state is to make sure that the Iranians can never have a nuclear weapon within the current government. Not to say that a friendly government may not be able to do it down the road, but the current government will not. And regime change is desired and hoped for, but we're not the ones going to do it. So those are the objectives, as far as I can tell at this point in time, which we're doing. We're moving very, 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 very quickly towards.
Okay, I'll get deeper into that in a minute, but
Sure.
Just from a military perspective, was this the right move? Strike the leaders, surprise strike them, take out communication instruments, bomb every location where they could fire off on us or allies, drones, and then completely dominate the airspace within a matter of days?
Yeah, and here's why. This is going to be a bit of a left turn, but I think your audience is smarter than the average bear. They can keep up. Radical Islam, in the form of the Shia, were going to do this at some point anyway. They were going to fire on the region, on the Sunni, and on the Israelis, because within their belief structure, the Shia Muslims believe that they are the ones who are anointed to return Islam into a single religion. That is to say that they believe they basically have to merge back in the Sunni, who are the Arabs, into the overall faith, that they're the ones who are chosen to do this. The way they are told in their doctrine that they have to do this is by creating conditions for the 12th Imam, their Mahdi, their form of Jesus, them saying it, not me, who's the religious and political, the disciple that takes the place of Muhammad. The way they do that, Stephen, is by creating the apocalypse. They literally have to destroy the Western world. They have to destroy the Israelis. They have to destroy the Arabs to create conditions for the return of their savior. So if that's the central theme and basis for their belief system, their religion, that's why they've never been deterred from pursuing nuclear weapons. They believe that the nuclear weapons that that God will allow them to get, inshallah, that they would eventually get them, they were protected by God, that this would allow them then to basically bring their version of heaven on earth. I know this sounds weird, but that's what they believe. So when you're confronted by that as a Western civilization, we have been playing a losing game by trying to deter them, trying to buy them off, trying to reason with them, because, Stephen, you can't reason with a cult. It's like they're not going to be deterred ever. So that's why this whole thing with Obama giving them this $58 billion and all these other things, like, it didn't deter them. It just sped up what they were doing. There's a great video I put on my X account. I tweeted it out earlier about Senator Marco Rubio talking about what the consequences would be regarding Iranian behavior once that we gave him the money. And he was right. And this was like 10 years ago when he got up and talked about this. So that's why we had to act. If not now, it would have been later, and it would have been probably more costly and more difficult. So that's why we had to do it. Look, I'm a Christian. I'm not an end of days guy, but I do believe there comes a point in time when you look at an adversary and you figure out they're not going to stop until they kill you. So I think we had no choice but to act, and act very, very severely in our effort to stop them.
Okay. I appreciate that context. They say this is a religious thing, but now that makes more sense. Space Force is President Trump's baby. He was mocked for that pretty heavily. How instrumental was Space Force in guidance, imaging, radar, mapping, understanding what the enemy was doing?
Significant. And to that point, yeah, I was part of the team who helped advise the stand-up of that in the Pentagon last go-around. And it was, you're right, nobody wanted to do it. Even Jim Mattis was fighting us on it, and he was told to do it, and he fought every step of the way. It was horrible. Anyway, fast forward, yeah, Space Force has been very effective in two categories. First, in strategic targeting, giving precise information, everything from ELINT, which is a very specialized version of collection that collects on radars, that tracks things. They've been super effective. And then also, believe it or not, space type technology, lasers. They've introduced for the first time in a serious way lasers onto battle space. We've actually had an array of lasers which are now being used to go after weapons. By the way, the Israelis have it too. The Israelis have been using them too. So it's been a good reveal, although the Pentagon still won't talk about a lot of these things for any number of reasons. But I suffice to say that they've been a real benefit to have an organized team that can look atmospheric and exo-atmospheric space things with new technology that's coming online. So I think they've proven their worth and the need to have a Space Force as a separate element within the Department of War.
Okay. I appreciate your background. I knew that you were involved, and I knew that Trump was mocked on that, but then I'm reading all of these articles about how instrumental it's been. How instrumental has the CIA been? Because my understanding is there was CIA on the ground, there were intel operatives, Mossad, everyone was gathering intel. They had hijacked all of the cameras on their street corners and their stoplights and everything. And then intel came in from someone connected to the CIA, letting them know, we know where Khamenei's going to be on a specific morning. This is passed over to the Israelis. The Israelis reach out to President Trump and say, we've got one shot where they're all together and we can get them. And then next thing you know, there's like 200 jets flying, bomb. So how instrumental was CIA in this?
So CIA is an effective organization under Radcliffe, no doubt, but they take credit for a lot of things that other folks do. Just saying.
Okay.
They're not the be all and end all. Do they do a good job with agent espionage operations? Absolutely. But Stephen, one of the things that, and I have to be careful here because I don't want to reveal too much about what we actually do that they get credit for, and that's fine. I've talked to you before about the fact that we, Department of War, figured out back in the 90s pager operation thing that the Israelis used against Hezbollah. We knew about that. We figured it out long before they did. So the technology stuff, I would attribute to probably the Department of War more than CIA. Just saying. And I have knowledge on things I can't talk about, but I'm just saying, yeah, I'm not surprised that we were that effective. The on the ground stuff, CIA may have had a significant role, and I haven't been able to sort out who did what yet because we're still in the middle of operations. But if CIA does its job and focuses on collecting high value clandestine information through espionage, yeah, they can be very effective. And I think they may well have been able to establish a presence within Tehran that was able to track these folks near real time. I mean, there's nothing beats the Mark I human eyeball being able to put an eye on something going on. No, nothing is better. I mean, look, I'm a spy. I'm a case officer. Nothing beats that. Nothing. So if you can establish a source in Tehran that actually kind of monitors this, good on you. So I think we've come to find the CIA did some of that, probably did it well, but they're not the only ones with folks on the ground doing things.
Okay. Let me go over. I'm just trying to ask you things that I want to know, and
Sure.
also I think my audience wants to know about. I also want to just go over a couple of worries. So, and I know you can't speak for the president or Pete Hegseth or anyone else, but President Trump mentioned he's not opposed to boots on the ground. What do you think that means? Could that mean the Kurd fighters that are going in? Does that mean once things are settled, there is a small presence to keep things organized? What do you think he might have meant by that?
It could be all the above, could be none of the above. So let me put it in context of what happened at the beginning of the first Trump term. So if you remember, Stephen, at the beginning of the first Trump term, ISIS was the big issue, that ISIS had basically eaten the Obama administration's lunch. Well, we all knew who were working the issue that was the choice. We chose to let them do that. The Obama folks were pulling punches. So when President Trump came in, the then chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Joe Dunford, Marine Corps 4-star, had a plan to go beat ISIS. And basically, they implemented that plan as soon as President Trump got into office. That plan existed under Obama. It's just he wouldn't let him do it. So Trump trusted Dunford, and I was part of that team back then too. And they did it through something called the by, with, and through strategy. That is to say that we worked through our allies as the primary boots on the ground proxy. That's how we beat ISIS. It wasn't us returning to Iraq. It was through the Kurds, through our proxies who did that. So we have a permanent base now in Erbil and Kurdistan, in the Iraqi area of Kurdistan. There are 9 million Kurds, Iranian Kurds. So are they trained and ready? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're like a military force that we've relied upon, we've trained, and they're kind of like saying, "Hey, put us in, boss. We want to go." And I don't think any decisions have been made yet. I think that's an option. The question becomes, what does the end state look like that President Trump wants? I'm going to say something a bit weird here in 1 second after I finish answering this part of the question. But the answer is, if there's a need for boots on the ground, I think the Kurds will be our proxy. There's no circumstance I see that we will put on the ground in anything more than a special forces A team, B team, or C team, maybe a D team, doing things on the periphery. That do I see us having boots on the ground in any expanded way? So it would be Kurds. But this is what's going on, Stephen. It's not about Iran, believe it or not. It's not about anything in the Middle East. As a matter of fact, if you watch the news right now as we speak, we're conducting joint operations in Ecuador regarding Southern Spear. We're doing global operations all across the planet. There's other operations the Pentagon's doing I can't talk about yet. My point is, President Trump is doing a broad series of military operations and, frankly, special operations globally that's meant to have an overall effect. And that effect is to basically end London from Lloyd's of London and all these other folks who basically play both sides against the middle from taking advantage. That's what's going on here. Just and think about it. It's because I got a question the other day on Newsmax, like everything is linked. Yes, everything is linked. Everything's happening at the same time because President Trump wants it to happen. This is not random. To the point of your question regarding MSNBC and CNN, is like it's all chaos. Well, it is kind of chaos, but he's got it to happen because he wants it to happen. And one of the things that people can kind of see this on their own is when he said, yeah, don't worry about the Strait of Hormuz. We'll insure your ships. Don't worry about Lloyd's of London. We'll take care of that. And we're the only country on the planet that basically can say, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll insure you. We'll figure it out. Go do it. And that's deliberate, Stephen. He's doing this to deliberately undermine the forces of globalism. We talked about globalism. Well, this is more a fight against globalism all across the planet rather than one or two things he's trying to do locally. So people need to take a step back and look at everything he's doing. Everything is linked.
Okay. That makes sense. I know I'm going to ask you about China here in a minute, but okay. Yeah. Another thing that he put out a Truth Social post that said he wants basically unconditional surrender, and if that happens, people will be protected, given immunity, and then he said that he will rebuild. This made a lot of people nervous because of nation building aspirations of Clinton and Obama and George Bush. Yeah. But do you think will help you rebuild is nation building, or is it more like we want to avoid World War II Germany, where they were just so beat into the dust that a Hitler rises, and then also the Marshall Plan of rebuilding Japan so that they could be a future ally and not an enemy?
Yeah. Well, both. I think we want to avoid any additional destruction we don't need to do. I still I'm on the record as of this morning saying, a week from today, we're going to see the end of primary combat operations. I think we're going to be done. I think we're going to be out of targets. I think something's going to happen by then. So, I don't think we're going to need a full month. So, and secondly, regarding the outcome, I think I would see something like the Board of Peace. Matter of fact, I would maybe even think the Board of Peace would be involved in this as an organization that can help other countries, our Arab allies, Allah and AKA the Abraham Accords, come in to work with them. There's no reason for us to be the ones who have to go in and rebuild things all the time. We have adequate and substantial support from our Arab allies. They have a stake in this too. They've been attacked. So I think we could see a multinational conglomerate corporation, something like the Board of Peace, coming in to help bring stability to the region. I really do believe that.
Okay. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has told several Arab nations the United States is not going to pick Iran's next leader. This isn't regime change in the sense that we want to install the next person, only that we took out the last person. Then President Trump said that he wants to play a role in picking the next leader. But then the next day, he said, I'd actually be happy with what happened in Venezuela. Do you think that means we took him out? Now you guys figure it out, but you've got to give us somebody that we can negotiate with to avoid future war. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. The way you framed it is exactly correct. I think that's what he's looking for. Again, you need to look at this from the larger perspective. It's like Trump, it's like, yeah, figure it out. I've got bigger things to do. So I encourage people to kind of look at everything that's going on at once, because that way you'll probably have a better understanding of what he's doing. President Trump started looking at the bigger pictures, like, yeah, give us someone we can deal with like Venezuela. Yeah, we kind of like Venezuela. So, yeah, that's the solution I think we're going for. Do we want to see the mullahs removed? Well, I think so. I think based on the way I explained the 12th Imam and their belief that you need to create the apocalypse, I don't think it's a good idea. But what do I know? But I think the idea that the Persian people, who are much closer to the Europeans in culture than they are the Arabs, want to be free. So I think I'd like to believe that they'll, be able to find the path forward to establish their own governance that excludes radical Islam from being part of it.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I figured that they were going, was more of a like, let's avoid a Germany of the 1930s and let's have more of a Marshall Plan of
Right.
Japan versus trying to morph and nation build and force our democracy down
Yeah, we're
people's.
not going to force democracy. Look, by the way, Stephen, there's no tradition for democracy in Iran at all. Not from the beginning of their culture has there ever been a democracy. That's one thing that sets them aside from Greeks, just saying. Like there's no tradition. So I don't think we care what government they come up with as long as it leaves us and their neighbors alone, just saying.
Okay. You mentioned maybe not wanting a mullah going forward. President Trump has already said, if you're just going to put forward Khamenei's son, I'm not going to work with him. Israel said, we'll assassinate him immediately. So on some level, they do want to get rid of the Death to America cult and the Khamenei family, but have a strong leader that we can not only hold in check, but also make sure that we're not going to be doing this again 6 months from now.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's true. Now, Khomeini's son, interestingly enough, has a lot of high value property in London. Just saying, kind of strange, but true. And so there's a little bit of kabuki dance going on here because the British have been kind of behind some of the shenanigans. So have the French. That's why the French don't want to participate. So I think it's time to call this out and for what it is. No, you can't have radical Islamists running a country if their primary goal down the line is to blow up the world. It's just one of the things I've talked about, and you may have followed this on my account. I talk about the idea of MAD, mutually assured destruction. During the Cold War, we had this concept between the two powers, the Soviets and us, that game theory was really applicable because the belief was that both sides were rational. That is to say that both sides recognized the value of peace and what an all-out nuclear war would do. This is reflected in several movies, which I recommend to people. The British did a movie called Threads, which shows how bad it would be to go to nuclear war. And of course, I think, Stephen, we even talked about it at one point, The Day After, ABC movie from 1983 that changed the trajectory of the Cold War that Reagan saw and the Russians saw. It's like, yeah, nobody's going to win this. So there was a rationality that resulted in negotiations and reductions through the START treaties, through the INF treaties. It was a set of rational thought process that resulted in the stopping of the Cold War. You're not dealing with a rational other in the Shia. You're just not. So yeah, I think it's very clear that's one of the reasons we want to make sure they can never get a nuclear weapon because we believe they'd use it. They can never have ballistic missiles because we're sure they're going to put their nuclear tipped nuclear weapons on the missile. So I think it's very clear that would not be acceptable, and I'd like to believe our Western allies and the Arabs would join us in this effort if they're called upon to do so.
What about you mentioned multiple operations, this global strategy, taking out the British Empire that's been trying to control us through banking and insurance, keeping the dollar strong, opening up opportunity in the region. What does this do to Russia and their ability to get drones, which have been very effective against Ukraine? What does this also do to China, who now has Venezuelan oil and Iranian oil cut off? They've got over 1 billion people, and they're on the verge of falling apart every day because of the size of that. How does this affect those two countries?
Well, China is most affected, and this is and that's why the Iranian bluff to close the Straits of Hormuz really doesn't hold any water. Iran would be the most hurt economically by the closure, and their ally, the Chinese, would be the ones who were deprived oil. So it doesn't make it. It's a bluff. They can't do it. At the time, right now as we speak, the Iranian oil facilities are loading tankers full of oil. They've not stopped. They're not going to shut it off. It would be counterproductive to their own interests. They're at least that rational at this point. And so the Chinese are the ones who are going to suffer the most because they're the ones who have the least amount of on-hand oil. They've got about a 3 to 4 week supply before it really starts impacting on them. And they have no alternate sources to go to because we control the other sources. So it's bad for them. Russia does can provide some of that to the Chinese. I think they will. But in the end, I think Russia recognizes, because they both stay. Remember, neither one of those countries have done anything. Yeah, they had a few strong words, upset about stuff, but they've done nothing. They've not even said, "Oh, we'll come to your aid." They're not. They recognize that their positions in this are so fragile, they won't do anything. They won't. Nothing's going to happen with the Chinese. The Chinese are going to sit back and hope that we come around to help them with their oil. Same with Russia. Russia recognizes losing Iran as an ally. Them trying to speak out at this point will get them nothing. So I do believe the Russians are hoping we can move forward with some framework that will end the Ukrainian war. I get that feeling. I can't define it more than that, but I do believe the Russians want to end this. And plus, to their benefit, Stephen, both Russia and China have been identified as spheres of influence that President Trump would accept in the new strategic doctrine that the Pentagon published. So I think they recognize that now that President Trump has the political will to do things, they need to sit back and let him finish what he's doing, and allow for this blossoming of this new global relationship where those three, Russia, China, and us, are the sphere of influence. And to your point, the British Empire and their bankers are kind of defeated.
Okay, interesting. All right, final question. You kind of already mentioned this, but it's always hard to make a prediction, but just from what the people you talk to, what you're seeing with your own eyes, you don't see this being a forever war.
So I'm very disappointed in some people I consider close friends and the way they're kind of wailing and gnashing their teeth right now. I don't see what they're seeing. I don't know what they're seeing, but I know what I'm seeing, and I know the direction of things based on the fact I know a lot of people involved. So nobody's panicking. We're not running out of high-tech weapons. We're moving on to using legacy systems like the B-52. I mean, come on, Stephen. Who doesn't want to see the B-52 dropping bombs on people? Come on. But we're doing a number of things which they say we're actually using less expensive weapons which can do the same job. It's like we don't need to spend a $300,000 ordinance on something we can put $15,000 worth of dumb bombs. Just saying, So there will be some transitions. There'll be some changes. The two big concerns I have, which are echoed by everybody else. First, are the Iranians holding back anything that they want to use at the last moment to try to overwhelm the defenses? That's always possible. Do they have nuclear weapons? Well, I've always believed they have at least two. I think we're going to come to find they did. They had no way to deliver them, though. So I think that's something we're watchful for. And beyond that, can we make sure that the regime is sufficiently defeated so we don't have to go back and do this again down the road? And that has to do with what does the final governance turn out to be of Iran, and do we have a direct role in that? I think we will. So those are the two big concerns I think a lot of people have. But militarily, I don't think we're going to have any problems continuing the current pace and being done with primary military operations within a week.
Okay. I mean, they had to strike with our best Air Force technology weapons. Now they move on to the dumb bombs. I think we're also going to see a major manufacturing shift in our military industrial complex of going to drones. I think from Russia and Iran, the U.S. has learned, wait a minute, you can really control an area with drones and missiles that don't cost millions of dollars.
Yeah. So I've been invited to participate as an expert on a panel down in Tampa in May at this at Special Operations Week, Soft Week, on the future of warfare. So they've asked me and a bunch of other experts to come together and kind of give our vision for what we see coming over the next 10 to 20 years. So yes, drones are going to be a huge part of that. I'm going through and thinking through some of my experience and how I see things. I'm not Nostradamus, but it's kind of funny that they want me to do some predictions and forecasts on what I see coming. But drones will be clearly part of that.
Drones, lasers, satellites, lots of energy weapons, whatever they used in Venezuela.
Yep.
Colonel Shaffer, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you,
If people
Stephen.
want to catch your program, where can I point them towards?
So just X. We're going to do everything on XT Spooky. Obviously, I'm on Facebook. People can look me up. We post things there as well. And then we have ColonelTonySchafer.com is kind of our place on YouTube for all the content. People can go look. It's free. And I do have, people can subscribe to our live content via X. So, and I hope they will, because what we discussed there, you're invited over too. So we'll have some great discussion with you on stuff as well. So Steve and I always enjoy our conversations. Thanks for having me join you on these important topics.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Folks, if you enjoyed this, please make sure to give this video a like. I'll put direct links to Colonel Tony Shaffer down below. The more views and likes we get on this, the better the guest. So thank you guys for being here on this broadcast.